France still collects a colonial tax. Just like it demanded an independence debt in Haiti, France still collects a colonial tax from 14 of its former colonies in Africa. France still has control over the economies of Benin, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Bissau, Ivory Coast, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Congo-Brazzaville, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon. However, France's fortunes in Africa are diminishing, with the recent ouster of French-leaning governments in the Sahel region by military juntas. Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, General Assimi Goïta of Mali, and Abdourahamane Tchiani of Niger recently removed governments in their respective countries who were under the control of France. Through a binding colonial act, these African countries are still compelled to put 85% of their foreign reserves in France's central bank under the French Finance Ministry's control. This system puts about $500 billion from Africa into France's treasury each year. The binding pact also insists that the former French African colonies keep ties with the French currency, the franc, align their education system to that of France, and give the former colonists military and commercial preference. France's primary tool of control is to install French representatives for the purpose of usurping its former African colonies' economies through their current accounts. The African member states agreed to deposit their foreign currency reserves in a shared reserve fund. These foreign currency reserves are subject to deposition in an operations account at the French National Bank at the discretion of the French. Between 1945 and 1973, 100% of the foreign currency reserves from the former French African colonies had to be deposited in the operations account. In 1973, expected currency deposits from the Francophone nations in Africa was reduced to 65% and further reduced in 2005 to 50%, while another 15% is kept in a guarantee fund. Simply put, France's 65% of all foreign currency reserves of the 15 nations and all revenue generated outside of the Union's territory is kept at the French National Bank. Contrary to other former colonial powers, France managed to install its representatives, commissaires, at the heart of its former African colonies' economic and monetary systems. France allows its former colonies only to access 15% of their money in any given year. Should they need more than their prescribed 15%, they have to borrow the extra money out of their own 65% from the French treasury at commercial rates. France has imposed a cap on the amount of money the countries could borrow from the reserve, fixed at 20% of their public revenue in the previous year. France has a veto should any of the former colonies need to borrow more than 20% of their own money. Also, a defense agreement under a colonial pact gives France the legal right to intervene militarily in former African French colonies and to set up permanent military bases run entirely by the French. It is yet to be seen how the former French African colonies will excel when France still has their economies suffocated.